español, pero vamos a empezar. Dame un segundo, por favor. Okay. So today I'm speaking about designing design education. My name is Hector Silva, and I'm an industrial designer based in Chicago. And I am currently a design educator at multiple universities here in the United States. And everything that I'm going to present to you are opinions and insights that I've come across through my young career. And I would like to state that these opinions are mine and mine only. And they're here for discussion. And hopefully they're here to improve the current state of design education in the United States. I know that design education is different all over the world, but these are what I'm going to present to you. These are some issues and some proposals that I have found with my experience here in the United States design education curriculum. So let's get to it. So first and foremost, design education here in the United States is very interesting. And as a professor, and I've been teaching for 6 years, one thing that I've noticed is that design students are not ready for industry. Designers today are graduating unprepared for entering the workforce. Design education has come under fire. Its value and validity are in question, and rightly so. The design industry is going through a shift, and universities don't seem to be pulling their weight. But as designers are apt to do, shifting a perspective can reveal great insights. For example, a couple years ago, when I was working for a design consultancy in Chicago, I was in charge of hiring incoming students. And it was really difficult to hire students that just recently graduated because they were not prepared to transition over into the workforce. Even with all the support, even with all the resources that the company would invest in the students, they never transitioned over into the environment, into the fast-paced environment um, that we expected them into. And therefore, the company lost a lot of money investing into these students. And after 6 or 7 months of them being employed, they were let go because they weren't able to meet our expectations. Now, does this happen everywhere? Probably not. And this is something that happened to me when I was working at this consultancy. Um, but being on both sides of the table as an educator, trying to prepare my students for industry, and also as someone who has been hiring students to work in the workforce, I've been able to see, um, you know, this balance shifting where a lot of students are not succeeding in getting employment right after they graduate. So a lot of companies' expectations are not being met, and that's what I meant about students not being prepared for industry. Some companies have elected to not hire entry-level designers in favor of those who have at least a few years of experience. The skill set of the latter being more in line with someone at an entry level. There is a gulf between design academia and the design profession, and it keeps widening. Another example that I have here is I'm really close with a lot of my friends that I graduated from university, and a lot of them are also senior design managers at their company. And as an educator, I'm always talking to them on how can my students be prepared to get hired when they leave school. And a lot of my friends who are in the position to hire have told me that their company no longer is hiring junior level or entry level students or designers. because like I said, the investment right now for these companies are not worth it. A lot of students are not prepared and they're not ready to transition over, regardless of how many resources. And I think a lot of that has to do with the education system not preparing them. And at the end of the day, a lot of universities and institutions point the finger at the companies, and the companies are pointing the finger at education. And at the end of the day, no one is really talking about how we can solve this problem. The four education model right now simply isn't working. The four-year higher education model isn't working for design. Students need to be exposed to real-world design experiences such as internships and collaborative or sponsored projects in schools in order to understand and design within the real-world parameters in which designers work in. Schools that integrate internships directly into their program, and a very good example of this is the University of Cincinnati. They have a co-op program that is extremely successful, and graduate students from that program actually graduate with 1 or 2 or even 3 years of work experience when they leave school. And experience that can't be matched by 1 to 2 years of school alone. The University of Cincinnati enjoys such a high job placement rate because employers have trust in their graduates who have honed their skills in the real world rather than through simulated class projects. So the University of Cincinnati actually does a really good job at preparing their students. And while they're studying at their university, they graduate with 3 to 4 internships already, compared to some students who graduate with just one internship. So you can tell which student is more prepared for industry. Obviously, 2020 has been a roller coaster ride for everyone, but the pandemic has changed education as we know it. And a lot of students are questioning the value of their education. Professors don't know how to use Zoom. A lot of institutions haven't even adapted to the online education model. A lot of schools have opened so that the students can come back, and they are treating it as nothing is happening, right? We're facing a global pandemic, and a lot of schools are prioritizing profits over the health of students. So that's very concerning. And a new model is needed. We need an education model that is more closely integrated with industry, where students gain experience through real world practice. And I like to, when I talk about a new model is needed, I like to talk about the way that I teach design in my courses. The way that I teach design in my courses is, um, my classroom environment is very similar to a studio environment in the professional world. I don't give projects, I give client briefs. So I treat the students like an actual designer. I don't treat them like a student. And then I myself do the work with the students. So whatever brief I give my students, I also dive in and do the work next to them so that they can see how I do it, and they can see my expectations, and they can see my work. I'm very transparent on my students looking at my work, asking me questions, and then I also get feedback from my students. So I believe that an educator and a student, whenever they're whenever they're working on a project, they need to work side by side so that the student can learn, and they can see how the professor is doing the work. So I think creating an environment that functions like a studio, it's a class where you go and learn an assignment. It's a studio space where studios go and work. With every project I do with my students, I do my best to replicate industry projects and processes. This includes every aspect of the product development process, such as CAD, sketching, prototyping, manufacturing, and even presentation. And without learning all of these processes in their totality, we cannot foster future generations of successful designers. Now, we also need educators who can leverage industry professionals and connect students to a diversity of content. So another thing that I do as an educator, um, we have classes in the fall semester, and then we have classes in the spring semester, and then we don't have any classes in the summer or in the winter breaks. So one thing that I do is I travel around the country here in the United States. And I meet with design companies, I go visit design studios, and I, the educator, become the student. I go and I sit with studio heads, I sit with, directors, I sit with marketing people, I sit with people in business, and I talk to them and I ask them what is happening right now, what is trending, what can I learn as an educator so that I can take this information back to my classroom and teach my students so that I can prepare them for industry. And a lot of professionals don't do that. A lot of design educators don't do that. They're not very well connected to the industry. And I think it's very important for educators to have a pulse on industry so that they can prepare their students for success. Now, designers need to be generalists, and this is something that um, Don Norman actually said. According to Don Norman, who's the author of Design of Everyday Things, a very popular book, designers of tomorrow need to be generalists. That is, have foundation in multiple disciplines such as the sciences, engineering, and psychology. The reality being that designers have almost no formal training in any of these topics. So you go to school and they teach about industrial design, or they teach you about graphic design, or they teach you about business, and that's all you know, and you're very blinded by that one discipline. The beauty of the idea of an of an autodidactism is that the process, which means that it's the process of practice of learning a subject without a teacher or formal education. So essentially, you're self-teaching yourself or self-education, is that it implies to everyone that whether you're a full-time student or you're a high school dropout, um, think of it as not a method, but more of a mood to engage in self-learning, and a mood that asks, what if? And the counterpart is you're being spoon-fed information. And, I think Don Norman does a really good job at talking about how the designers of tomorrow need to learn more than one discipline, not just one specific skill set. And that brings me to this question. Could have you designed the next iPhone? In 2007, when Apple announced their revolutionary product, the Apple iPhone, um, I always ask my students, if you were a designer on the design team at Apple in 2007, do you think that you could have designed the iPhone with the training that you have right now? And a lot of the answers is no. We need multidisciplinary students competent in skills and disciplines outside of just design so that they can adapt to the challenges that may not have existed during the course of their education. An example of that is if you were on the team with Apple and you were going to design the iPhone, and if your background was in industrial design, the only thing you could bring to the table, the only value you can bring to that team was the industrial design value. Now, if you had education in other disciplines like in engineering and mechanical engineering and computer science, then you become more valuable to the iPhone team because you're bringing different aspects to that table than just the design or the aesthetic value that you're adding to the iPhone. Education is as much give as it is take. In an article that I wrote last year or last month called An Opportunity for Change, I talked about how academia can shift to meet the demands of the design industry today. And we painted a picture of the ideal design educator. Yet that is only half of the equation. We need to recognize that education does much give as it is take. Namely, education is the sum of the effort of the student and the professor. Education, especially in the field of industrial design, is not defined just by what occurs in the classroom, but it is defined by what the student does with that knowledge outside of it. And of course, everyone has students and they love to complain. Students love to complain. Actually, they're passionate about complaining. We've received comments asking, to my, some of these comments are, my professors are so out of touch and haven't designed anything since the 1990s. Our professors, they haven't designed anything since the 80s. Well, maybe your professor is out of touch, but what's even more out of touch is your attitude. And I think students need to realize that the professor's role is to introduce you to concepts, and the student's role is to take a deeper dive into those concepts. You have 4 years, or sometimes 5, to create a portfolio that will get you hired. Do not waste a second in self-pity. Rather, direct that energy to learning yourself, what you feel, what you're missing out on. And if you feel like you're lacking in a skill set and you are not, then it's really up to you to really make up for that work that you're not getting in a traditional, institution. There's this designer here in the United States. His name is Michael DiTullo, and I remember him telling me about a very specific experience he had when he was a student. And he said that he had a dilemma in trying to juggle 2 sponsored projects and 3 liberal arts courses in a semester. And when confronting his professor about the lack of hours in the day to handle not 1, but 2 projects and an English class, his professor responded with, "Do you want to be a designer or do you want to be an English major?" And armed with this question, Michael went to his other, professor in English and flatly asked, can he do the bare minimum required to pass the class? And today we recognize Michael as a highly successful designer who also speaks, reads, and writes English just fine. But I think a lot of that has to do with, do I want to be a designer? Because at the end of the day, those other required courses are not going to really help you in the long run if you're trying to get hired as a designer. Um, in design, at the end of the day, grades don't matter. It's the work that you put together. And when I say grades don't matter, take that with a grain of salt, because obviously you should be passing your classes so that you can graduate. But no employer is going to care about your 3.98 GPA in your studio courses or your C in English. What they're going to care about is the ability to enter their company and contribute to the work that they do. Employers like self-starters, and if they say that you started a project because you're passionate about the subject rather than, oh, this project was assigned to us, you will already have their attention. If you feel like your education is suffering, whether by virtue of the institution you study at, because of a global pandemic, or even both, then take your education into your own hands. Nobody's responsible or to blame for your design skills or lack thereof, except for yourself. So education is definitely a two-way street. It definitely requires an attentive educator, but also a very passionate and a self-starter student. And here in the United States, a lot of you might not have this problem, but design education costs a lot and it sucks. And we've noticed, and there's a lot of drawbacks to that. Design education here in the United States, depending on what school you go to, is around $50,000 to $75,000 a year. There are a few public schools teaching, industrial design, and college education is inaccessible for groups of lower income brackets, which means that they're excluded from the industry. And as a result, their perspective is excluded from consumer goods that we make. It's a cycle of exclusion. So not only is design education expensive, it's also very elitist. You either have money to go to school, you don't have money, you don't go to school, or you borrow money and you go to school and you have to pay that money back when you graduate and you don't have a job. So it's a very unfortunate situation. And hopefully, I have some proposals that I would like to share with you. So, with everything that I've been putting together, I've been listening, and this is why this year, I believe in May, I created this design education initiative called Offsite. And this design education initiative was created under my nonprofit, Advanced Design. And after noticing these gaps in design education, we wanted to tackle them head on. So we founded Offsite, and design is an iterative process to arrive at something better, and that's exactly what Offsite is. Offsite is a 12-week online pilot design program to fill the gap between school and industry, intended to supplement existing design education with real-world knowledge with 6 core classes. The core offering is intended to expand on subjects that get a little or no visibility in traditional design education. In other words, insights that can only be learned off-site, outside of the realms of traditional design education. Offsite employs the expertise of working industrial design professionals who are eager to dedicate their time to teaching relevant skills. This pilot program is initially aiming to target students, young professionals who are looking to upgrade their skills, craft their portfolios and case studies, and further, understand, their understanding about the business of design. Offsite's mission is to better prepare designers who are transitioning into their careers, build their brand as a designer through their portfolio content, and challenge them to develop mentorship opportunities through our unique program. So who is Offsite for? So we're hoping to foster mentorship through the network that our organization has built over the past 4 years. And right now, if you're a student and you feel like your institution isn't giving you the best design education, we build Offsite as an alternative for that. If you want to upgrade your skills, if you want to level up, if you want to get an internship this summer, you can join Offsite and really prepare for that internship. If you are a recent graduate that graduated in May or last year or 2 years ago and you feel like you got shafted by your school and you still haven't found an opportunity to work, Offsite is a really good opportunity to go in and learn from 6 design professionals and really upgrade your work. The one thing that Offsite does very well is we've adapted to the online ecosystem with a lot of schools really juggling and being very indecisive on what they're going to do when they return back to school. We immediately went to the online ecosystem, which gave us a global presence. Right now, we have 50 students who are in the program, and we have 50 students who are tuning in from 6 different time zones around the world. And so this allows us to not only provide this high level education at a very affordable price, because we don't have that overhead that a lot of really these big institutions have. And making education more accessible essentially is our goal. Offsite, our tuition for Offsite is $2,000, and that is for a full 12-week program for 6 credits and that are being taught by 6 designers in industry with a mentorship program. And $2,000 here in the United States is actually equivalent to 1 college class. And on average, students take 6 college classes. So you can do the math there on how this is a steal, and this can potentially change a student's trajectory and a student's life. the one thing that we did wanted to really emphasize is mentorship. And a lot of schools don't offer mentorship. And mentorship is something that happens over time. It happens organically. You meet someone, you have the same skill sets, you have the same very you share the same interest, and that happens over time in a very organic manner. But thanks to 2020 and the global pandemic, that is really hard to do because you can't meet with people. You can't meet them for coffee, you can't meet them at conferences. So what we're doing is we're creating a mentorship program so that our students have access to not only designers as their educators, but outside, they have access to designers around the country that can help them and teach them and mentor them as they go through our program. So mentorship is actually a very, very valuable, proposition for our offsite program, and it's something that a lot of schools don't offer, and it's something that is taken for granted. Moving forward, offsite right now is a pilot program. We're in week number 6 of 12, and we're trying a lot of things out, but we want to take a lot of these learnings and use them to grow a program to the point where we become a second option to obtain a design education away from traditional academia. So we just want to create an alternative option for students who don't want to go, option A right now is 4 years, X amount of money, X amount of tuition, etc. And we want to create an alternative to that just so that students have options. And we just want to do things a little different. And essentially, we want to come in and disrupt design education as we know it. And that's with everything that I've proposed to you, with a lot of these problems that I have seen in design education. I've provided now a proposal that can be a really good way for students to, gain experience and also an alternative to design education through offsite. And with that being said, I would like to thank, WAM and everyone here for your time. So thank you very much. I would love to answer any questions you might have now.
Many, many, many thanks, Hector. Very interesting chat that you have had with us today. And thanks for sharing a lot of points and issues that are really in a trend today, nowadays, on the students' minds. Actually, I have some questions, if Luciano allows me. I would have to give you a couple from YouTube, so we don't have it right now at hand, but this is one from Gina. What is the reason there is a huge gap between education and workforce that you did mention?
Yes.
That's the question she's doing for you.
What is the reason for that gap? As an educator that continuously talks to design professions, and I go and talk to design studios, and I go and find out, what does it take for a student to be employed at their company? The honest answer is that a lot of students do not know how to take an idea to market. And if you're going to a traditional institution, if you're going through the design education process in industrial design means that you're designing something that is going to be manufactured. And if a student doesn't know how to do that, if you don't know the logistics, if you don't know the business end of it, if you don't know how to take something and make it real, then you're not an industrial designer, you're a concept designer, because you could only do concepts, right? And being a design educator, I've had a lot of students that are not prepared, and there's only so much that I could do because I work with other faculty. There is faculty that work above me. I provided solutions and I provided ideas for us to change that. But at the end of the day, a lot of schools are not preparing students to go out and design an idea that can be manufactured on a global scale. And that's the problem with a lot of students, is that they don't have the skill set, they don't have the resources, or they don't have the tools to be prepared to go out and design. And so a lot of companies don't even hire students. A lot of companies ask for 2 to 3 years of experience, and it's hurting a lot of schools, and it's also hurting a lot of students who trust these institutions to teach them and prepare them. And unfortunately, a lot of schools come up short.
Okay, and well, very related with the first, this first question is, then, what are the students lacking to be prepared? That's another student's question.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of students are lacking. A lot of it has to do with, the content and the information that the schools are not teaching. And this is just from my experience, and I'm talking from my experience. But a lot of curriculums haven't changed, in schools. A lot of essentially institutions should be communicating with industry, and they should be changing and adapting and evolving their curriculum according to what's happening in the industry. And that's going to notify the professor on what they should be teaching. If the professors are teaching the same classes over and over again, and industry is evolving and moving and changing, then our students are already at a disadvantage. So there's a lot of things that students really need to prepare. A lot of it is communication. You need to learn how to communicate, not just your designs, but you need to learn how to communicate with other people in business, in marketing, in engineering. So you need to be multidisciplinary, and the students need to be ready to learn how to have a voice in a table. When you're creating a product, it's not just the designers. You're sitting at a table with other people who are stakeholders and decision makers, and you need to understand their language so that your voice is heard. And the majority of the times, we live in a bubble. We think that design is everything, that it's the world, but in order to make a product and make it to the shelves and make it success, you got to work with other people. So students need to be good at communication. They have to be good at telling a story. They have to be good at manufacturing methods and processes. So how is something is made, in a factory, and then you need to be good at designing.
Okay, Hector, that's very interesting. Well, I would like to complement this question, talking a little bit more about the other side of the coin. Okay, you have talked about the students' needs, but what about the professors, the teachers' needs? I mean, for example, if you, instead of a spoon into the mouth of the students, an exercise that you can do or repeat iteratively every course, and you decide, for example, to brief them, then you have to know or to remember, if you have ever done it before, what's a brief, what it should contain. I mean, what are the challenges to the other side of the equation?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I went into design education, when I learned that I wanted to be an educator and a professor of design, um, I knew that in order to be a successful educator, I needed to be as versatile as possible. And what that means is I needed to make sure that I wasn't just good at one thing, that I just wasn't good at sketching. I needed to make sure that I was good at talking about other topics, so that I was able to pull topics and bring them together, or able to help as many students as possible. And I think as an educator, educators need to be versatile, and they need to also be a student of design, because when you become a professor, that's when the real work starts. It is our job to, help our students succeed. And, we have a responsibility, and that is a really big responsibility. And if our students are not succeeding, then we need to evaluate what are we doing as professors? How can we be better? What are some more information that we can take? What else can I learn? Whether it's in architecture or in, in food, in science, in engineering, what else can I do so that my student can succeed? And I don't know if I was able to answer your question, but I think being versatile is very important.
Well, actually, Hector, I think Päivi, our invitee from Finland, has a comment on that, and she says, Hector, thank you for the open discussion of the challenges. I appreciate your suggestion of multidisciplinarity. And besides that, we have Patty Stevens, no, Dr. Rodriguez, which is the effect that the COVID-19 will have in the future of design education, which will be the trends that you perceive will take on. And I think this is pretty much related with our prior discussion, and it's getting very interesting. What to say about that, Hector?
Yeah, COVID-19 has shifted everyone's life. It has disrupted the way that we learn and the way that we teach. And everyone is now teaching on Zoom and on a camera. And, I think now we have to really, as designers, we shouldn't have an excuse on being good at communicating, because now you're communicating through a camera, and you as a professor should really, um, be the model of inspiration so that you can bring that inspiration and that motivation to your students who don't have access to a studio, who don't have access to, a shop, who don't have access to, a place where they can work. Everyone is working from home. So yes, COVID-19 has disrupted design education. And I think moving forward, the education model needs to adapt to to put students' health first, and not profits. And that, unfortunately, that's the problem here in the United States, is that a lot of schools opened up for in-person teaching, and a lot of students are getting sick. And a lot of these schools are already behind because they don't want to adapt to the online model. Um, and essentially, one of the biggest obstacles that us educators need to overcome is how I bring that studio culture into an online ecosystem. And it is an obstacle. It's not impossible. With my design initiative called Offsite, we were able to manage that through different applications, and students are even more excited now to be a part of a community, because they're able to participate in something with students from around the world, not just from one specific region. They're able to talk to students from India, the Philippines, from Scandinavia, from Europe, from Mexico, from Canada, and they're able to learn, because design is different in different parts of the world. So I think adapting to the online ecosystem is just as crucial, and it's going to be different. I think educators, now we have to be really good at showing our emotions and really expressing all of our senses through this little camera right here.
Yes, indeed. Um, Before I go to the next one, to the next question, is there any comment, open comment, Luciano?
Hector,
Oh,
well, I congratulate you, my friend, and your this educational initiative with Offsite. I think that one of the biggest problems, at least what I have seen, is that students, and sadly many professors, don't take into account how to understand the material culture. And when you don't understand what is the material culture and how it evolves, you are unable to provide to that material culture.
Mhm.
That's my opinion. I don't know what you think of it, but I found it in a lot of my students.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you. I think uh, you know, it is really difficult to you know, take content and take material and then, you know, try to understand it in a context that your students are able to digest it. Um, and that is something that I struggle with. That is something that I will always struggle with. But I think, you know, one way a couple things that I've done that have really allowed me to overcome that obstacle is surround myself with other educators, surround myself with a really good support system that are able to help me understand some of that material. Um, and you know, I think there's a lot of high level, you know, there's a lot of critical thinking, you know, design research. There's a lot of high level content in design that I struggle with because that is not my forte. And honestly, the best part, the best thing that I can do is surround myself with people that are smarter than I am, that are able to help me understand that information. Because that information, you know, even though it's pretty high level, it's extremely valuable. And you know, we didn't become professors so that we just you know we just checked in or checked out, but we became professors because we wanted to inspire the next generation of designers. And sometimes we are going to have bad days where we don't understand something, and I think just being open and transparent and honest about something is better than trying to think you know everything. And that is one way that I feel that I deal with that. I just get around with educators who are older than me, who have more experience, that are wiser, and are more intelligent, and they're able to really, you know, dissect that information. Um, Another thing that I do is a lot of the information that I give to my students, and this is going to be a little funny, but in order for me to make sure that my information isn't so high level that the, you know, PhD professors can understand it, I talk about my content and my material. I talk to my mom about it. I talk to her about what I'm doing, and if she understands it, then anyone could understand it. So that's a really good way for you to really make sure that you are talking, you know, general English to everyone, and you're not getting super high level on a lot of these topics.
Yeah.
Okay, Hector, let's give the word to Sunant. He has asked. Sunant, go ahead, please.
Hey, good morning, Hector. I don't know if you remember me from my Autodesk days, but we had you over on distributed design and using the cloud. So that's one part. But I first of all wanted to congratulate you on bringing out these insights into the Forte, because it actually helps me with what I'm going to be speaking about on Thursday.
Fantastic.
So it's a multivariable issue over here in terms of design education and the gap between industry and what's happening in our little design department. So the unfortunate thing, and I'm just offering my perspective, is other disciplines have actually taken on elements of design and they're racing away. It's getting democratized. You know, things like design thinking, the realization, prototyping. That's one piece. The other piece that we sometimes don't look at as educators is the next generation. Who, meaning our user, the student who's coming in, the 5th grader, the 10th grader who's now making things, putting things together because things are cheaper. They can go to a 3D printing facility where they can afford it, but they can also go online and use a lot of the tools to innovate. So the raw material that's coming into academia, higher education, is a very different being from my time, and I'm, you know, older and gray. So that's one piece. So the way we teach, the pedagogy of that whole thing, the experience that we provide is something as design educators we need to kind of re-examine. The second part is let's role play 2025, when those students are graduating, what will the world be like? And as you mentioned, what we are going through right now is going to have an impact on industry, the way they work, the expectations. And you used a couple of terms like versatility, empathy, these things that come through really some of the liberal arts concepts. It's unfortunate that professor asked, you want to be an English major or designer? You know, the idea is to connect the dots between the two, English and design. So not be just course takers at a university that I went through my sociology and psychology, but actually be able to connect to. That's where the professors can actually be very helpful in, you know, focusing and bringing everything seamless. So there are some of these issues that the siloed approach has kind of gotten into, but more than the design, I mean, it's an education issue, of course, but administration of universities. How much are they understanding the value of this profession that came about? Because now other professions like medicine, engineering have embraced design in a lot more meaningful way and are moving forward. And our profession has been kind of left behind. You're absolutely correct. We need to re-examine the whole thing and perhaps restart. And faculty don't get any, like your online offsite, it'd be great to have a faculty professional, you know, development kind of piece. So thank you for the insights. I just wanted to kind of add that on.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to add to that, you know, we're about to launch our next, you know, spring semester, and we are thinking of being a cohort specifically for faculty, so we can train them. Where we want to add another track for professionals who are seasoned professionals who may be out of, you know, touch in the day-to-day of designing, and they want to be a part of that. And then we're also offering another track for high school students, because industrial design is now becoming very popular. Where there's a lot of high school students,
Right.
8th grade and you know, freshmen and second year students in high school who now know what industrial design is, and they want to be prepared for college. So we see offsite not only as an alternative, but as an opportunity for you to get an education without, you know, really going into debt or you know, getting a loan out, or you know, design education should be accessible. And so we're very excited about that. And then a lot of the things that we're also doing is, if a student doesn't get an internship, they come to offsite and they receive the same internship experience, while at the same time they're leveling, they're growing, and they're leveling up their skill. So
That's wonderful. In fact, we have hired at Boston College Surya Vanka, who's been doing design swarms across campus, faculty, students. We're trying to encourage to create change culture, which could then impact the actual departments. Thanks. We'll talk more about it on Thursday.
sounds good.
Hector, we have
Okay.
another question here from Sarah. She says, hello, how can we as students be more capable to have general skills and be more prepared for the real life if our school aren't giving us the offsite view?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very common question when I talk about this. The very obvious question that the student is going to ask is, okay, what can I do? And honestly, you know, if you're a student who looked at this presentation and you feel like you're not prepared, honestly, I would figure out what is it that you want to do with design. Where are you right now? And what is it that you're trying to achieve? And that should give you some answers on what you have to do to prepare for that. Right now, there's a lot of design resources that everyone can get online, either through YouTube. There's a lot of tutorials, a lot of free things, and a lot of opportunities that students actually don't have to get from school. When I was a student, and this was 10 years ago, my school did not teach me how to use Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. You had to come to school already knowing those programs, and I don't know why they expected you to learn that. But thanks to YouTube, I was able to teach myself those programs for free through tutorials. And I would go to school during the day, and then at night I would then teach myself things that I wanted to learn. When I was a student, I wanted to go into toy design, so I watched a lot of videos of toy designers and how they design and how they sketch and how they process. So it's going to come down to what you want to do as a student, and then I would make a list of things that you need to achieve to get where you're trying to achieve. A lot of that's going to take self-initiation, where you're going to have to realize, and you just got to be honest with yourself, what is it that I'm good at, and what do I need work on, and where can I get that help. But then at the end of the day, if you're in industrial design, your job is to create products that make it to market, and you should know that that process. A lot of it is through understanding where you're at the moment.
Okay, well, we have a lot of questions here. I would like to gather them and to be, if it's possible for you, Hector, to send them to you. I think you have opened a very nice and wide discussion here. I would like just to summarize or try to summarize this huge idea by telling just one thing that maybe hasn't been mentioned in a very direct way, is that also we have to be taking care of how do we designers want to be looked from the side of view of industry. For example, a marketing graduate for a company, for an organization, has very clear value utilities. He's gonna help me with time utilities, with product utilities, with image utilities, with form utilities. And it's very clear for them what are they getting, and then therefore what are they paying for. With design, it's a realm of uncertainty as still. So I guess we have a lot of work and a lot of chat about these themes. And I really want to thank Sunant and Paibi and Jorge and Luciano, and of course you, to be with heroes today. We have a lot to discuss ahead of us, and well, there is no more to say to everybody. We want to thank you for your assistance, for hearing us, and we'll be taking on account all of the questions we have, and we will try to pass them to Hector. Hector, thank you a lot, and let's hear and wait for Stephen Melamed, who's going to be also sharing with us a very, very interesting argument for today. So long, Hector. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, my friend. You know you're always welcome, and WAM is your other academic home when you are not in the States.
Sounds good. Yeah,
Looking
and then
forward to see you in person.
I hope that's very soon. And then for those educators that are watching, I do want to end things by saying, really think about and remember why you went into design education. A long time ago, you didn't go into this profession because it was easy, but you went into this profession because you were passionate about changing it. And that's essentially what I want to do. So thank you, WAM, and thank you, Professor Claudio and Luciano and Jorge, for allowing me to talk about what I'm doing. And hello, Professor Melamed.
Hello, Hector.
Okay, well, Stephen, welcome. Well, let me introduce you to our audience. Vamos a continuar con nuestro ciclo de conferencias del día de hoy. Tenemos con nosotros a un extraordinario educador del diseño industrial en los Estados Unidos. Se trata del diseñador Stephen Melamed, que nos acompaña en este momento. Hemos tenido el gusto de contar con Stephen en muchas ocasiones en la Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana, que nos ha venido a visitar. Stephen nos ha venido a educar a los educadores y nos ha compartido, porque él es una persona que le gusta mucho compartir, su visión sobre el diseño, y eso nos ha impactado a muchos profesores en la manera en cómo abordar la educación de los estudiantes. Entonces, me voy a permitir leerles una introducción para que conozcan ustedes quién es Stephen Melamed. Stephen Melamed es diseñador industrial y educador de diseño con más de 4 décadas de experiencia en diseño, en consultoría, manufactura. Ha trabajado para diversas corporaciones y sectores sin fines de lucro. Stephen se involucra y entrelaza múltiples disciplinas. Una vez más, la importancia de manejar disciplinas múltiples para crear una cultura de innovación. Stephen es el autor de By Design, Museum Environment for All, y ha escrito numerosos artículos sobre innovación, diseño industrial, desarrollo de productos interdisciplinarios, pensamiento de diseño e investigación de diseño. Además de su trabajo en la UIC, donde es Stephen profesor de la University of Illinois a Chicago y el director del Innovation Center de la misma universidad. Él es fundador y director de la firma de consultoría de diseño industrial internacionalmente reconocida Plus D2 Incorporated y fue miembro fundador del Grupo Nacional de Defensa del Diseño AIGA, Design for Democracy D4D. Sin más preámbulos, demos la más cordial bienvenida a el profesor Stephen Melamed a este espacio virtual de la UAM. Stephen, you are most welcome. We are very happy to have you here, my friend.
Thank you so much, Luciano. Thanks to you and Jorge for inviting me to participate, and for all my other friends and colleagues down at UAM in Mexico City. Happy to be here.
Well, my friend, the stage is yours.
Okay, then let me share my screen. And okay, so again, happy to be here for this annual Congress event. I've had the pleasure of participating in person in the past. So this is a unique experience for me and for all of us, I'm sure. So as my colleague and friend Luciano said, I am Stephen Melamed, and I'm going to share with you some thoughts about innovation in a time of crisis. I've split up my talk into 3 parts: past, present, and future. And I'm offering a singular perspective narrative upon this situation based upon 45 years of design practice. So I'm a senior citizen now, looking back, having an opportunity to reflect. So needless to say, I'm going to begin with the past in order to set up the context for why I believe perhaps my perspective, my point of view has any relevance today and for the young designers up and coming. So let me begin by saying when I began my career almost a half a century ago, this was the definition of what industrial design was. Basically, we only dealt with the form of function of machine-made goods. And that's how my career began in 1975, originally working for a lighting manufacturer, Koch and Loewy, out of New York City. And in 1978, I was very proud that the first one of my own authored lamp designs was able to go into production. And throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work in many product categories, having worked in corporate consulting, not-for-profit. I was at Schwinn Bicycle Company when myself and a couple of other designers, along with marketing, developed and launched the Paramount brand. And I'll share with you some of the things that we developed. Every aspect that wasn't directly the frame of the bicycle, we had worked on. I also had the opportunity to work for Veta, which was a company out of Lugano, Switzerland. And so I was introduced into industrial design very much from developing very distinct machine-made goods, hardcore products, in which attempting to discover some unique feature that could be built into the product that would make it novel. When I was working for Shimano, one of the world's largest manufacturers of cycling componentry, out of Osaka, Japan, we were the first team to develop this kind of cycling shoe, which included this Velcro tab adjustment, as well as a floating Kevlar plate in the insole, which absorbed all the torsion on a clipless pedal to prevent the sole of the shoe from breaking after extreme stress. And this was the first of many things that led to a number of patents that I've developed and been inventor or co-inventor, US and foreign patents, over 60 throughout the course of my career. So let me just say what I believe innovation means to me, to give this some context. And so for me, innovation, simply I define, generates novel, valuable ideas or applies existing ideas in new ways. And innovation applies creativity, which is what we are all trained to nurture and develop, to solve problems or develop new or improved products, processes, and or services. I work primarily in an area that I define as needs-based innovation. And by needs-based innovation, I mean we try through user research, identifying a user group, and trying to isolate some kind of specific user unmet need. And that particular insight drives the way that we design the product or the digital interaction. And this is what has been commonly now referred to as human-centered design. And I always look at human-centered design through the lens of empathy, trying to really relate to the user group. And this is significant, certainly, in our current conditions. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But in beginning this reflection for today's talk, it also has made me think about, it's not just human-centered design really that we're focusing on. Now we have to broaden the scale and scope of this and really think about life-centered design. So continuing on through the variety of products and industries that I've worked in, and please note that when I say I've designed these products, that means I was, in some cases, the solo designer, and in many cases, working on a talented design team in order to develop, design, and execute these particular products, be it in consumer electronics, office equipment, home purification systems, even discursive ideas, things as hidden from consumers as head-end routers. This particular device services 25,000 households for internet and telephony. Healthcare products, housewares, always attempting to find some unique aspect that would help to create some small way to innovate the category. Even things like, this is a folding portable training toilet seat for toddlers. And in this case, creating a toy that is also a handheld shower so that the parent can remove the turtle's shell while in the bathtub to use it as a handheld shower head. Always trying to identify some unique feature that would innovate the category. Or in this case, adding, believe it or not, 30 years ago, a handle to a submersible sump pump. Prior to that, it was a two-handed operation, which looking back is absolutely crazy. Fitness equipment also became a powerful area of study. And you can see I have an affinity towards sporting goods. For the 1984 Olympics, I was asked to design a folding corrugated cardboard chair that could be used for temporary seating throughout the activities. Point of purchase displays, even packaging. And that led up to the point of my career where now the definition of industrial design evolved, as you can imagine, as we entered the digital age. And now not only does the first part of the definition apply, but now we were charged and empowered to look at user experiences, digital interactions, and services. And as you know, products today, there are many products that now we jokingly refer to as phygital, the combination of the physical with the digital. I have had the opportunity to work on the generation 2 of the Segway and many other kinds of simple electronic devices that employ user interaction and even a project that was a fun project for the university. You may not know it for my friends at WAM, but we are called the UIC Flames for our athletic teams. And in homage to the Olympics, before every major sporting event, they bring out this cauldron and the torch, and they light it in honor of the activity that is about to begin. And like many of your professors, I've had the opportunity to write about my take on certain aspects of the design field, be it in articles or chapters in books. So that brings me up to the present, the world we exist in at the moment. And maybe like happening in Mexico City and other parts of Mexico and around the world, I was walking in my neighborhood and found this mural painted on a wall off of an alley, which certainly speaks to the current state of affairs we're living under. And to share this quote from the Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities, we are currently living in the best of times and the worst of times. This has given us an opportunity to really think about and reflect where we are at as a society in this moment in time. This is what's going on in my particular neighborhood, which I'm sure is similar to many of the things that you've witnessed in Mexico. We've had protests, we've had mostly peaceful protests, but some looting. We've had situations where stores now have become boarded up, possibly because they've gone out of business. The way we wait in line to enter stores has completely changed. The queuing process for public transportation has also been stipulated in a different way. We've certainly seen an increase in homelessness due to the pandemic, as many people have lost their jobs. And who knew a year ago that Zoom would become a verb and has become integrated into the way of life that we now live on a daily basis. The signs are everywhere as how we see how we're supposed to behave in public spaces, in public restrooms. Now we have telehealth popping up everywhere so that you don't even have to go see your physician in person. Storefronts. A friend of mine, an architect, recently completed this project in which they've integrated the Chicago Public Library on the first floor when integrating senior housing on upper floors so that seniors have immediate access to places to sit and read. And obviously that is being re-examined now because communal gatherings are temporarily on hold. My local bodega has done this workaround in order to protect itself from customers at checkout. Outdoor dining in Chicago has completely been reinvented. And also, as indoor dining is looked up, we see inefficient use of space and all these many workarounds to create barriers to keep people safe. And I've seen through doing some research on the internet that in places like Paris, we have these outdoor dining pods that are now being used. And in San Francisco, these plastic bubbles that I saw in the news. And even the way we acknowledge things like a birthday, our behavior is evolving and changing due to necessity. The way we express this kind of joyous occasion is taking on new meaning. And this really, really, in reflecting, affects someone based upon their age. So you have to think someone like myself who's in their 60s versus someone who is experiencing almost a year of this pandemic in their 20s, for me, it's less than 1% of my life. For someone in their 20s, this period is representing over 5% of their life's experience. We are all beginning to experience pandemic fatigue. We see how things are evolving in the behavior of the way we engage in activities that used to take place safely indoors. Now, the way concerts are being held outdoors with families and close relatives being set up in pods to be able to participate safely. Or this car concert in Germany, where people now willingly will enter a traffic jam in order to participate in this kind of music venue. And I just noticed this the other day, even the way major retailers in the States, like this company, Banana Republic, is now doing clothing rentals of brand new clothes that people can use for 30 days. Our behaviors are changing. I was listening in on a talk by Vicky Matranga, the Director of Design Programs for the International Housewares Association. And they were talking about how dramatically sales have increased of all these kinds of domestic kitchen appliances because everything is shifted to online shopping. I'd also like to point out two projects that were in rapid response, some that took place on campus and one that took place with some students in a design charrette. So one of my colleagues, Kimberly Wilkins, put together an innovation in COVID-19 working group to address these 4 project areas listed on the right here. This was back in March when the pandemic first caused the lockdown. UIC quickly assembled teams that were interdisciplinary of physicians, engineers, designers, public health officials, as well as university administrators. Every collaboration moved to remote using tools like Mural and video and in-home prototyping for sharing of early mock-ups and prototypes. Using readily available materials in order to create low-cost, self-made face masks that would be tested to provide the same level of efficiency as an N95 mask. And then putting out the necessary manuals so that people, first responders, could build these on their own using things as simple as paper clips, aluminum foil, and available fabrics. Or as this project became available through easily accessing it using the URL or the QR code to get the template to create the shield. One of the biggest problems we found were the first responders within the hospital environment who were having to go through intubation, where the patient was at the extreme point where they needed to be placed on a ventilator. This became one of the most dangerous parts of inserting the tube into the patient. And this is one of the things that was proven to be an area of most concern. So some of the solutions that were quickly developed within a matter of weeks that could be deployed using readily available materials. And also something as simple as we found that N95 masks were made in 2 sizes, but yet the small size became inaccessible and couldn't be found. So we had to find ways to either adapt or create a small size mask because many of the first responders were of a physical size that they required the small size mask. We also created what we called a portmanteau project, which is a mashup kind of project where you combine two things, and we charge design students to investigate this. And this one individual, Noah Wangren, developed an air filtration system using readily available materials in order to create this product using a standard 24-inch fan, a standard HVAC filter that could be found at any hardware store, and creating this covering in order to create a simple home in-filter system. And how it might be used within the home. One of the things that we're thinking about is now, what is the future of what we refer to here in the States as the third space? What is the third space? Well, we all have home, we used to have office, but the third space were the public workspaces that people would go to if they didn't want to work at home or office. Things here in the States, places like a coffee shop like Starbucks, or WeWorkspaces, where people could rent or participate in public open spaces. Now we have maybe the fourth space, as the NBA was effective to do, where they created what they called the NBA bubble, where people were now confined into a particular space and they were quarantined and couldn't leave. So all their activities for living and working took place within the bubble. This brings up the question of what research has shown to be segmenters versus integrators. So what I mean by this is that segmenters are the people who want to maintain the work-life balance by saying, I will work between the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And those will be my work hours, even though I'm working from home. Now that is different than the integrators who say, I will work whenever I need to get the work done, and I will build in the activities within my home life at whatever time is suitable for me personally. So we see this paradigm shift in the way people are utilizing their time and the way they're behaving in relationship to this. This recent study that just came out shows that productivity of people who are able to work from home, so that first of all separates a large segment of the population because you have the ability to work from home, which certainly excludes many parts of the working population. But for the people who could work from home, if you'll note on the far right, productivity has skyrocketed. And one of the things that we have found is that here in the States, since March, 89 million hours of commuting time going to and from work has been saved. And that time has been put into active work. So what I personally believe is that the pandemic has pulled back the curtain on many of the behaviors that existed prior. And we have to rethink that the systems that were in place prior were designed. And if they can be designed, they can certainly be redesigned. One of the things we're noticing, though, certainly here in this country, is that people in some walks of life are pulling everything towards themselves. They are not thinking about the collective. Because a global crisis should remind us that we are actually a single interconnected ecosystem. Once we look below the surface, we realize everything is entwined. And we need to realize that there have been numerous global pandemics throughout history. But what have we really learned from all this? We have to really pay attention in the here and now. And as we look back upon the way we behaved prior, it's easy to look back. It's like looking in a rearview mirror. But now we have to begin to look forward. We have to begin to look towards the future and what will that look like? And remember, as I just said, we designed what's happened prior. Now can we design how we move forward? I realize this is absolutely true. Uncertainty lies ahead. This is what ambiguity is all about, and this is what design deals with. As a colleague, Bruce Archer from the Royal College of Art in London said back in 1965, there exists a designerly way of thinking and communicating that is both different from scientific and scholarly ways of thinking and communicating, but yet completely as powerful. And I want to point out that artists and scientists operate on the physical world as it exists in the present. But what is significant for us as designers is we are bound to forever treat as real that which exists only in an imagined future. And we have to specify the ways in which the foreseen thing can be made to exist. This is what designers do every day. We are dealing with an imagined future. The pandemic has, for me personally, had me consider, is this merely a pause, or can this be the Great Reset? The pandemic has undone decades of progress. According to the annual Goalkeepers report issued by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, when measured against the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So perhaps it's time for us to rethink progress and to rethink innovation, to really understand what do we think progress is. Because the way we've looked at it in the past, many of the activities we've done have become toxic. We now to move forward with a vision for how to create a thriving future. Because the world is not ours, we are just passing through it. Designers need to base the future designs we create on fact and science, but totally imbued with passion. One of the things we all live with are the predictive modeling algorithms created in all the softwares we use, where they have used the way we have behaved every time we've touched a key in doing a search on the internet. We have now given way where they use our past behavior in order to predict our future. But what do we as designers owe to future generations? Because one of the things that we have had in terms of unintended consequences is we have been a part of creating the tyranny of convenience. So I believe all of us, it's a time for serious reflection. It's a time where hopefully we can enable positive behavior change. Because people are beginning to experience pandemic fatigue. So perhaps through mindful observations of what's going on in the world around us, we can begin to inspire. I recently sat in on a talk with Bruce Mao, who just published a new book in which he talks about changing the paradigm where design has a new set of responsibilities, as illustrated here. He said, we treat nature as a pantry and a toilet. It's time for us to re-examine this relationship. It's time for designers to be bold, to really rethink our vision and not merely being a service-oriented profession. We need to aspire beyond the service as well as be able to inspire what we want our future to look like. That brings me to what I would share with you as what has been referred to as the overview effect. The overview effect is what scientists call when astronauts have returned to the Earth after being in outer space. And they realize when they return to Earth, they come back with this feeling of how precious and how sacred and how fragile the Earth truly is. They come back with this ethical epiphany where they can never be the way they were prior to going into space. And let's show some love and give a shout out to Mario Molina, Mexico's only Nobel laureate, because he was bold. He had a vision. He shared with how the man-made pollutants were destroying the ozone, the inner atmosphere. So let me conclude my talk today by talking about the 4 Futures framework that was developed by Professor Jim Dater back in 1979, professor at the University of Hawaii. We have 4 potential futures we could look to. Continuation, business as usual. Limits and discipline, where perhaps we can adapt our behaviors in order to address the concerns the pandemic has brought forth. Discipline and collapse, or maybe the pandemic, as we have seen in many aspects of society, are just going to create greater system degradation, leading to failure and possibly ultimate collapse. The number of people losing their homes, who have lost their jobs, we really need to be bold that the way the systems were set up were created. Why can't we set it up with the premise that everyone on the face of this planet deserves to live without food insecurity, without housing insecurity, and that they can live and raise their families safely? Or Could this be a time, a future of real transformation? Could this be the moment where this is the game changer? Where we understand our collective future is in our hands. We can really make a difference. So my closing thoughts. You guys, you're the future thought leaders. You are the conceptors that come up with the ideas. You connect these ideas to the greater world at large. You're the catalyst that initiates these thoughts. You have the ability to communicate it using your designerly skills. And ultimately, like the conductor leading an orchestra, designers can take a lead role moving forward into this new imagined future. So my 3 recommendations for designers, and particularly young designers. Number 1, above all else, replace judgment with curiosity. Number 2, converse and observe. Talk to people. See what their motivations are, what their desires are, what their pain points are. And number 3, what we do all the time as designers, try stuff, prototype things, see what works, improve it, incrementally make it better. And to quote our 16th president here in the States, Abraham Lincoln, he said this after the Emancipation Proclamation: the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's what designers have been trained to do, to create an imagined future. And if you say, well, how do I start? Where should I start? It doesn't matter. Literally, begin anywhere. Just like a baby learns to walk by putting 1 step down and then putting the 2nd step down, wherever you begin will be the right place. The main thing is you must begin. So to close with this comment from Albert Einstein, the sign of real intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. And let your imagination blossom throughout your design career. Thank you all. I appreciate the time you've given me to share these thoughts.
Thank you so much, Stephen. As always, very enlightening. And I think there's a lot of information that you provide us that we have to digest it and to look forward as educators, both as educators as students, that well, the future is in our hands. The future,
absolutely,
we cannot let anyone else to try to grab that future, because, well, we've seen where we're standing right now. Thank you so much. I want to see here in the chat if there is any questions.
Sure.
Not yet. Well, Anibal says, thank you very much, Stephen. Very inspiring lecture. Of course. Yes, it is.
Well, thank
Jorge,
you, Anibal, for coming.
Jorge, you have any comments about this? You're silenced, Jorge.
Sorry.
Your microphone is off. Okay.
Yes. First of all, thank you. It was very inspiring. The talk. It's food for thought, as they say. And what I just wrote these times of crisis, such as a war or a pandemic period, like the one that we're going through. There are the seeds for innovation. So, what good do you think will come out of this period? What do you think in 2 years from now, 10 years from now, what will remember of this period? What it will change us as humanity, or I don't know. What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Well, Jorge, obviously we all hope that yes, it will change the behavior in the acknowledgement that we realize we cannot simply think in terms of our individual needs.
Yeah. That
the whole system breaks down when everybody pulls the blanket to themselves.
Yeah.
This is why I was saying the curtain has been pulled back.
Yeah.
And now, because of the way information is shared globally, we have maybe for the first time in the history of our collective global outlook to actually make impactful change to improve the lives of everyone. I mean, the last time, if you look back even 40 years ago, if there was a pandemic, pre-internet era, we didn't have the ability to share the information or communicate like you and I are doing now. This has to enable this better behavior. But again, it's a question of will, because you know, there are always those forces that want to control the way things move forward.
Stephen, Päivi Tosavainen says, well, Stephen, thanks for the thoughts. Maybe pandemic is good after all, so that we will change.
This is the hope. But keep in mind, it has been proven in the past that oftentimes we know the way forward, but yet we don't move in that direction. This is where I was saying we have to be bold in order to move forward with force and commitment. But of course, we can only control what we can control ourselves.
Si alguien tiene preguntas, por favor, que las puedan escribir en el chat para comentárselas con el profesor Melamed. Patti, ¿algún comentario?
No, está todo muy bien. Digo, es una nueva faceta, un nuevo reto, ¿no?
Yeah, I think that the information that you provide to us, that you share with us, we are all aware of that information. But suddenly it's like a big punch in your face, because the responsibility that we have as not only as educators, as human beings toward our human race and our planet is huge.
It's huge, absolutely. And I think that comment, when I was putting this talk together, yes, for me, it was like a punch in the face as well, because needless to say, none of us have specific answers, but it starts with asking the right questions to move us in the right direction by being aware of what the design problem is. And I think this is why, again, as designers, as humans, as educators, we have to be bold in the way we move forward.
Okay, we have a couple of questions here. Ariel Lagunas asks, what do you believe in the role of designers in changing the political landscape in the years to come?
Well, you know, I can only speak, again, from my own perspective, but I remember back 20 years ago when we had the 2000 US presidential election. And in that election, when it was contested between George Bush and Al Gore, myself and other designers came together and formed a group called Design for Democracy, in which we actually worked to design the way the polling place worked, the way the ballot machine worked, the way what was then a physical ballot looked. We tried to interject ourselves into the process of voting to make it more effective. This is one small example. We need to find ways to insert ourselves into the process to improve the life of everyone.
Okay. Aníbal asked you, with so many factors changing at one time, how can designers influence society? Would industry change their approach to product development? What do you think about this?
So what I think is, first of all, Aníbal, this is obviously a very difficult question. But if I look at the project I pointed out from my colleague, my architectural colleague, where this integration of senior housing with the library on the first floor, this is one of what needs to be many steps of moving the quality of life into the right direction. In terms of manufacturers, when designers who work and engineers who work together to develop the products, if they demand that the company employs more sustainable practices for manufacturing, for use of materials, for use of energy sources, for disposal at end of life of product, this is how we force change in our own little sphere of influence.
Aníbal states that he believes it's a great opportunity to shift from quantity to quality. I agree with him.
Yes, absolutely.
Luciano?
Alda, we must refer, Alda Sisumbo, she states that we must reflect and change the way we act to improve. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Absolutely. And thank you, Alda. And it comes down to making companies understand that you cannot purely exist on this model that you have to sell more stuff. Because all the more stuff we create, the more garbage we create. We have to rethink that model. And as Aníbal said, if it's higher quality, so it lasts longer, it doesn't end up in the landfill right away. We need to move forward.
And one last question. How the mobility should be on the near future?
Mobility in terms of people or in terms of equipment?
I don't know, people.
People.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, obviously for me, mobility for people, and there is mobility, and correct me if I'm interpreting this incorrectly, but mobility in your ability to progress through your life rather than physically move from one place to another, but to improve the quality of your life. If this is the question, then it starts with removing housing insecurity, food insecurity, safety insecurity. And we have the capability to do all of this, but it's a way we reframe the way we want to see the interaction between human beings.
Luciano, I have a couple of questions here from YouTube. May I?
Yes,
Please.
please.
The first one is, back to the basics means sustainability, Professor. How can it make it happen when industry seems don't to be aware of it?
So many of the industries that I've worked with in the past, not only may they not be aware of it, but when they are made aware of it by the designers, the first thing they complain is that it costs too much. But this is the problem that we spoke of just a minute ago, because if you're trying to sell the lowest cost object, you're trying to make everything as cheaply as possible to extract as much profit as possible, rather than creating this sense of shared value. You create value for the consumer as well as value for the people making the product. It means you're thinking in a much longer term scope, because now I want you to have my product and I want that product to last you many years of good service.
Okay, I have another one that's about your split on the past and into the future. It says something like, in the past, everybody's strategy was meant into looking for uniqueness, not only design. So which would be, in one word, the strategy for the future?
That is a very good and tough question. Very good. Let me think about that for a moment. I think the strategy for the future needs to be centered around what I'll call as new value. So it's not value in the context of what we perceive value to be in the past, where value means somebody's extracting from the system value for their own personal gain, but this sense of collective value, where we all benefit from the outcomes of what we're doing.
Thank you, Luciano. We are on time.
Okay, any more questions? Aníbal,
Not...
Julio Muñoz.
Yes, hello, Stephen. Thanks so much for your conference. I'm very impressed. All the work you have done. And as we can see, you have a lot of experience. So, but what do you think, what would you have to say for students? How do they will manage with all this pandemic effects, all the crisis, whereas they don't have the time to go out to see products, to analyze materials, to do research outdoors? And how do they going to interview a possible client if they are indoors doing home office? I mean, it is not, with your experience, you know, I can tell you can move all around. But what about the students? What would you tell them? How to speak, how to move? What do they have to do actually? Thanks for much. Thank you very much for your conference.
Thank you. Needless to say, students, because currently, like you, I'm also professor at the university, and my students are challenged by how to conduct the research. And we know within this time, if I use the project that I spoke about early in my talk, the portmanteau project, this mashup of different things, in that case, the fan with the filter, I think as instructors, we have to take the limitations that we currently exist with, because we can't deny this, and we have to fashion our projects in a way that enables students to use only what they can do within the confines of their home, their apartment, whatever they have access to through the internet for research. it's a challenge that is not going to go away anytime soon. But I think as instructors, it is our job now to give very limited parameters for the students to look at the projects in order to help them through this pandemic period. It's a challenge, there's no doubt about it. They're going to have to go back to their family and friends constantly and use them as guinea pigs for research.
And they're doing that. Well, Stephen, in behalf of WAM, in behalf of our research area, we thank you so much for this very deep thoughts that you leave here with us today. Thank you so much. As I told early to Hector, you know that here you have your second academic house.
Yes.
And as a friend, you know, we're very fond of you. And me, Young, we send you our love.
Thank
And
you.
we have to be bold, my friend. You're
Yes.
very right.
Yes.
Okay.
And let me thank you guys, everyone, for attending, for giving me the opportunity. And above all else, you gave me the chance to think about these things. Because prior to this conference, I've had many thoughts, but you gave me the opportunity to put the thoughts together. Unfortunately, I don't have answers, but I have a lot of questions right now. And I apologize, but I actually have to jump off and teach a class.
No.
Okay. Well, be safe.
Back
Thank
to
you
reality.
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Adelante, Luciano.
Pues te dejo a ti, Claudio, ¿cómo se llama? La guía de lo que sigue para que presentes tú.
¿Dónde está Paivi? No la tengo preparada.
Les recordamos a todos nuestros asistentes que por favor pongan su número de registro para considerar su constancia. Gracias.
A continuación, el doctor Jorge nos va a presentar a nuestra siguiente oradora, la doctora Päivi Tosavainen de Finlandia. Adelante, Jorge.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here with us. I will make your presentation in Spanish and then we will switch to English. And also, I'm going to switch to Spanish. En el chat ya puse como que el resumen de la conferencia de la doctora Päivi. I put in the chat the translation of part of your presentation, so it will be easier for anybody to follow. Claudio, no sé por qué razón está apagado mi cámara, o no sé si tú la apagaste. A ver.
No, para nada.
Bueno, está apagada.
No, es que está en este momento el screenshot de ella, de su conferencia. Adelante.
Okay. Bueno, la presentación, el título es Educación del Diseño de Servicios en la Universidad de La Aurea, que es de Ciencias Aplicadas, y el título es El pasado, el presente y el futuro. La doctora Päivi tiene experiencia laboral antes de entrar al mundo académico. Trabajó en puestos internacionales con la compañía Nokia Mobile Phones. Tiene más de 15 años de experiencia como analista en la industria y desarrollo de operaciones globales de una corporación multinacional. Su experiencia administrativa consiste en la implementación de programas de cambio estratégico a gran escala para cambiar el enfoque de una empresa orientada del producto a una empresa orientada al servicio. En el 2005 obtuvo su doctorado en negocios internacionales en la Universidad Aalto de Finlandia y en la actualidad es profesora en los programas de maestría y dirige tesis en ese nivel de posgrado. También ha sido profesora visitante en Bélgica, Holanda, Chile y México. Sus líneas de investigación se enfocan a mercadotecnia y administración de servicios y educación superior. Ella colabora con investigadores y profesionales de la industria para explorar cómo los servicios y una orientación al diseño puede transformar organizaciones, como implementar una orientación al servicio y enfocarse al cliente. La doctora Tossavainen fue invitada como parte de un grupo de expertos en la iniciativa de la Comisión Europea que se tituló Habilidades High-Tech para la Industria, promoviendo el crecimiento en el sector servicios y la creación de empleos. Esto fue en el año 2019. Y más reciente, ella participa en un proyecto a nivel nacional 2018-2020 titulado la Academia Finlandesa de Diseño o el Finnish Design Academy, que es patrocinado por el Ministerio de Cultura y Educación. Y ya para terminar y que nos haga favor de hacer su presentación, la doctora Päivi se desempeñó como administradora de 2 proyectos de investigación que obtuvieron financiamiento externo. El primero fue innovación en servicios mediante la integración de los involucrados o los stakeholders, es decir, todas las personas involucradas que son estratégicas, y transferencia de conocimientos en servicio a las pymes. Dr. Päivi, we are delighted to have you here. So over to you, and we will be listening to your presentation. Thanks a lot. Thank you and welcome. Bienvenida.
Thank you, Jorge. First of all, gracias por la invitación. My Spanish is not very fluent because I have not been able to travel and visit you guys over there. So hopefully we get away with this pandemic situation so that we can meet face to face. But nevertheless, this is second best thing. Don't worry. So my name is Päivi Tossavainen and I come from Finland and the university is Laurea. And you can stop me at any time if you would like to raise the hand so that I can see it. You can use the chat as well. So if you like to write in Spanish there, that's fine because somebody will translate that at the end of the presentation. So, but if you would like to speak with me in English, that's fine too. So let's see how I deal with the time-wise. I'm not very good in keeping time, and I just saw such a nice presentation before me, and the presentations were so refined that that mine is totally different, but I do everything differently anyway, so just bear with me. So let's go ahead and see what we do, how we do things at Laurea. So it will be different. So I will talk about first, Jorge gave a short presentation in Spanish about me. I will talk about a little bit about Finland because you don't know it so well necessarily, and then the educational system so that you have a background, and then we move how we do things in our university. And there's a lot of information available about Finland and us and our culture and all kind of stuff. And I put here some of the kind of like also references so that you can find things and see what we are and how we do things. So as Jorge explained, I'm not a designer. I don't even come from the design school. So this is a very different presentation for you guys because I show a different way of dealing with design and design education as well. I have enjoyed immensely with Hector's presentation because I agree most of what he says, and I could put that in management education that it sucks too. So we are in a situation where we have to really reconsider the curriculum and so forth. What I come from the economic side. I have a doctorate in international business, also my master's degree there. And I used to work about 15 years with Nokia and Nokia mobile phones. And as Steven just mentioned, that we have to make the products more sustainable and long lasting. I remember one of the best mobile phones in last century, the model 2110. Many of your parents probably might remember that. It was killed because it was too durable. It was too good phone. It lasts forever. If I pick my old one from the warehouse, it still probably works. So it had to be killed so that we can produce more and different models and so forth. So we have this dilemma with business wanting something and we humans want maybe something else. And there's a collision between those two issues. And we have to think about how do we overcome with that. And maybe we can learn something from the design side. I have been working with Laurea the past 10 years or so. They actually gave me a certification as a teacher, which is really weird. I'm not very good in teaching anyways, but here goes. So, but I have been visiting in Mexico and Chile and Latin Americas in various reasons and trying to collaborate with your teachers and your friends there and so forth. And then I also do research here in Finland with the national context and also in Europe and so forth. So, and the latest is the Finnish Design Academy, but there are a couple of others as well. So quite research oriented, maybe kind of like typical academia in that sense that I do research, but I have also a long background in the industry. So maybe I can still get some ideas from there, or at least reflect back on what was then and so forth. But needless to say, I should also go back to the school or back to the industry to see how things are done today, which I do typically through my students, but also myself. So few things about Finland. These are some fun facts about Finland, and we are really weird country. We are up in the north part of Europe, really far off from everything. And we don't have much of natural resources or anything. We just have lakes and forest, to be honest. And we don't even have much people here. You have more people in your neighborhood than we have here. So less than 6 million people. So we are really, really small population in a really, really big country. So the pandemic restrictions are not so strict with us because we avoid people anyway. We don't live close to each other anyways. We don't need to be told to have this 2 meters between people because we are like that anyway. So for us, it has been maybe easier to make this change throughout this COVID-19 pandemic situation. But of course, we have the fatigue as well, as Steve mentioned, that lots of the Americans do the same way. And our expressions are here that we are kind of like withdrawn from many foreigners think that we are very shy and withdrawn, that we don't speak anything and so forth. But once you get to know us, we are quite different. A few other things that if you recognize anybody or anything of this slide, then you know something about Finland. So I don't follow up so much music anymore, so I don't know what kind of music the youngsters listen, or your age, or so 20 something. So there are just some little bit older bands like Nightwish or Him, and then there's Rasmus and Darude's Sandstorm is still playing everywhere. We have the best gin in the world, which is rye manufactured in the middle of the Finland and win lots of special awards for that. Kone Elevators is one of the biggest industrial company of Finland. We have 2 Nobel laureates in Finland in this decade, so we have more than Mexicans have. The first one is Martti Ahtisaari for the Peace Nobel, and then Bengt Holmström, who has won the Business Nobel, which is not actually a real Nobel in that sense, but it's also said to be a Nobel Prize winner in that sense. We have quite a lot of gaming industry, so most of you have heard maybe Clash of Clans or Angry Birds or these kind of things and so forth. So there's lots of all kind of different things in Finland, even though that we are very small population. And if anything else, the weirdest thing in Finland is that air guitar world championships held in Finland every year. And I think last year it was the 20th year, and people come all over the world to play air guitar. So we are really, really weird people over here. So we are bold and brave and weird, to be honest. So that's my humble opinion about us, but you get along with us very, very easily. So a few other things. So I put this in Spanish so that it's easier for you maybe to read while I talk about it. So the star here nominates the metropolitan area of Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland. And then there's an Arctic Circle over here where the white and blue meet. So the Santa Claus actually lives there in Arctic Circle, not in a North Pole or anything like that. It's in Finland and it's Arctic Circle, and there's a really huge village that he lives there with all the elf and reindeers and these kind of people. So depending on how you calculate, there's 5.5 or 5.6 or 5.7 million of us, so less than 6 million, that's easy to remember. And our cities are very small as well. So you can see that Helsinki area is 1.4 million, which is about, fourth of the population in one small area, and then the cities are relatively small compared to the cities that you are used to in Mexico, and even the one small area in Mexico City is bigger than the population of Finland. So it's a really different view that what we have of the world. And then if we move a little bit closer to the educational stuff, we are quite educated nation, and it's of course easy to say because there's so few of us, but it has demanded a lot of work. And what we are really proud of, that the difference between the schools, whether it's an elementary school or high school or university, that the schools in all over the Finland are pretty much the same quality. So if you have to move around the Finland or change your school, you are following the same kind of curriculums and same kind of policies and same kind of rulings and so forth. And there's not much differences between the schools. So that's a good news in that sense. And we have about 1% of PhD holders like myself. 30% of people have university degree, either in a university of the scientific university or University of Applied Sciences like Laura, and 40% of the people have vocational training or high school. So it kind of like gives you an idea that we are built on knowledge sharing, new knowledge and education, and we are quite proud of that. And also we do quite well in any kind of PISA audits and these kind of things, at least so far. We never know how it goes. And when we look at European Union, so Finland is part of the European Union, and in European Union there's this dual system of schooling and educational system, and therefore we talk about this. First is this kind of like scientific university, which leads to first the basic degree, then the master's degree, and then you can end up with the PhD. And I work here on this side, which is the University of Applied Sciences, and we are really kind of like focusing on people who are working at the same time when they are studying. So many of the people who are doing the, let's say the bachelor degree, they spend 3 to 4 years, no more. If you think about the same amount of time spent in research university or scientific university, they tend to stay there 4 years or more, even though that the curriculum is set for the 3.5 to 4 years. So our students are much more quicker to go to the working life and so forth. So what else is there? I teach mostly on this master's level, but I will let you know a little bit about how we do service design also in the bachelor level, so that you kind of have an idea. The difference between studying either the master's degree in the university or University of Applied Sciences is that you need to have work experience before starting the master's degree education. It used to be 3 years. It changed last year to be only 2 years. So it's quite different. So you cannot go directly from your bachelor level to the master's degree. You have to go to work in between and then apply again. And in any university in Finland, you have to actually apply. You have to go to entrance examinations and so forth. So it's not kind of like taken for granted that you get the study place. Excuse me. So, but this is the area where we are working, and it says that we are kind of like a professional university, but we have the same standards concerning the academia as have the other universities. And I always tell to our students that you should be proud that you are in the University of Applied Sciences, because you will have the academic rigor, but you also have the professional, so the practical skills of working, which Hector was really worried about. And we do this very differently than the universities have been doing for decades, even in Finland and hundreds of years in everywhere else. So universities have been looking what the University of Applied Sciences are doing and copying some of our practices also to the scientific university side. Let's see if I can close that up so that I can move ahead with the presentation. Okay, so few numbers about us. We are relatively small school or university. We are the third biggest University of Applied Sciences in the Helsinki area. So there are two others which are a little bit bigger than we are. But we are the most appealing university. So if you measure that how many people have come to entrance examinations and how many are accepted to the degree programs, whether it's a bachelor degree or whether it's a master's degree, and depending on different curricula, our average is somewhere 7 and 8. So it means that if we have one seat at the classroom, there are about 7 people competing about it. And that's quite a big difference. We have degree programs where we have 12 applicants per seat and so forth. So, but on average this year, we had this around 8%. So 8 people looking for the same starting places, which means actually at 92% of everybody who is applying to our university don't get in. So it's kind of like a problem for us, because we would like that everybody could get in, but we are not in charge of the quantities of the students. So in Finland, it's the Ministry of Education who decides how many students we can take in every single degree programs and so forth. So that's a challenge to us, but this year, because of the pandemic, we have gotten lots of these extra student seats or student places. So first we got 400 places, and then we get another 400. So we are doubling or tripling our intake in this year, which is a good news for many students and those people who would like to study with us. Okay. One other thing that is kind of like interesting is the employment rate of graduates. So it's 96.4. So we measure it in Finland that in 2 years' time after you graduate, you will get the survey about have you found a job, and then the students respond to that, or former students, so alumni respond to that. And then the calculation and statistics are done at the ministry, and we got the highest number of the employment rates of our graduates. So we obviously do something correctly or something right with our students in order to get them the skill sets that they need when they go to work for the industry or the public service and everything in between. So let's see what we do and how we do things differently. First of all, we have this pedagogical model, which is called LBD, which means that learning by development. It's not learning by doing, which is MIT's slogan. They just do something, make an error, do it again, make an error, do it again. We rather have it differently. So we like our students to get information from the teachers about the topics and the themes, what articles, books, and these kind of things should be read. We go through the main points of literature and research, and then the students also read themselves quite a lot. So that's the development aspect of having this kind of like research orientation there. But they also develop something in practical. So they are always working with some kind of a real life problem. So in every class, in every degree program, we invite our industry or public sector collaborators and friends and whomever to work with us and provide us all kind of challenges that they are facing. And of course, it's a teacher's job to match that challenge is meeting the criteria of the particular course or particular degree program. So we work with companies like Volt, which is the food delivery service, probably also moving into Mexico sooner or later because it's a Finnish-based company and they got lots of startup money and all kind of investment money recently. We work with Unilever, which is the huge conglomerate of all kind of domestic products. Polar heart rate monitors are familiar with some people who are interested in measuring their health. We work with the banks, we work with the cities, hospitals, all kind of businesses or organizations, tax office, you name it, we work with them. So we are not restricting our collaboration just with certain type of industry or certain type of sector. So therefore we are quite different in that sense. And then moving, let's just check the time. Moving ahead, that how did we get in this kind of situation and moving towards the service design issue or topic. In 2007, the administration and the rectors and principals of our university decided that we Laurea, needs to be the greatest university when it comes to service innovation. And there we started to do lots of different kind of things. We started building up new curricula. We actually inherited one degree program from another University of Applied Sciences where we were cooperating with two universities to build one kind of like new service marketing and management curricula. That moved to only to be at Laurea in 2008. And at the same time, we established and changed that a little bit differently and functioning it a little bit differently and make it to look like what we wanted to teach and what we think about the education. And then at the same time, we also started to look what the service innovation actually means. And based on lots of research, lots of discussion with the industry and public sector collaborators, we came up with the idea that service design as a methodology is the better way to create service innovation than is the more traditional way of doing things. Because we decided that world, well, we didn't decide that the world is based on service business, but we foresee that the business is basically service business, no longer so much based on this industrial logic or so forth. But this was the starting point. So we see that, okay, the theoretical perspective comes from the marketing and management side. It's called service marketing and management. And then from the design faculty, the design degrees, the design universities, we kind of like start looking what service design can bring to us and how much should we incorporate that into our degree programs. And the main idea in this was that we are not educating anybody with the designer degree because we are not a design university, but we are educating future business professionals, experts, leaders, maybe managers, and so forth, both on the bachelor level and then on the master's level. And they are a little bit different depending on which level you are working with. But we see that we have a lot to give those people who have a, let's say, economic view of the businesses. They might be HR professionals aiming at that, or maybe ICT. They might be nurses, midwives, physiotherapists, and so forth. So they have this profession that they are learning, but also we see that they need to learn something more. And typically this type of education is called T-shaped people, the letter T, which stands there on the left side. So we are trying to advance non-design professional competencies in service design. What that means is, of course, different with different universities and different people. But we think that the mindset of design, when we talk about this empathy that Stephen and Hector already told you, is very important. And management education lacks that because it was based on the lowest cost, the scales of the production and these kind of things. It was not really human-centric. It was not really emphatic. It didn't necessarily consider what the users or the customers need. And therefore, we need to find out a way to change also the management education, as we call it here, to be more elaborated in more to other disciplines and being multidisciplinary in that sense. So you have had presentation of speakers now who are doing design research and design practice from the design universities and so forth, like Hector and Stephen. But I come from the service and marketing management, and Laurea as well. So we provide, for example, business degrees or hospitality management degrees or healthcare degrees. So we are learning something called design-based innovation. And we take the view of the business, how the business should be run, from something called service dominant logic and customer dominant logic, which are kind of like theoretical perspective, the lenses through which we look the world. It's totally different from this industrial logic, this goods dominant logic or production orientation that has been the past 100 years. So we have moved away from that already a decade ago. And thinking about service innovation can come only through respecting the customer needs and listening to what they want and providing that with, of course, in a sense that also have a business capabilities and sustainable business opportunities there as well. So it just cannot be pretty products that nobody needs or pretty products that are too expensive to produce and deliver. They have to be both. And in the middle there is the customer or the user, which is kind of like the focal point for both sides, both the design and also the marketing and management research that we are looking. And therefore we think that the service design is kind of like a neat way of kind of like getting into the practical way of doing things. So looking into the service experience, looking into the customer experience, looking into the user experiences, and then kind of like understanding the latent needs of the consumers, and then looking into the different ways of visualizing, different way of telling the other people in the companies or developers, the teams, that what we are aiming at, and inviting them, everybody, all the stakeholders, to invite them to collaborate, to create those kind of services and products which are really now the ones that the customers actually want, or not something else. So this is the biggest difference of every single university that I have ever visited and ever seen. But because we have been already 1 decade doing this, we have been copied quite many universities, especially in Finland, but elsewhere as well. But we were the first one to provide this linkage between design and service marketing and management research, and we are very proud of that. it's very interesting how the Scandinavian countries, Sweden and Norway, are following up this logic as well, because it is kind of like how we see the world anyway, because we are small nations and small population, and we cannot waste anything in that sense. It means that in Laure, service design is educated in every single bachelor level degree programs. And here is the list of those bachelor programs that are held in English. We have, of course, more in Finnish, but if you are interested to looking for an exchange program, this would be a great place to come eventually when you can visit. And everybody is going through the basics of service design so that they have the hang of it, what it means, and how they can use the professional skills in different kind of service design settings, whether it is held by somebody else or whether they are participating in a service design project, or whether they are just kind of like being followed and asked questions and so forth, so that they would know what it means and what are the basic terminology, what is the basic processes, tools and templates and so forth. There is a different way of doing it. So you study the whole autumn or whole springs or half a year, or then you can do design sprints or hackathons and jams on top of that. But everybody is technically doing that. And I saw one example of the courses. This is an old one, which we created for Haltia, which is a nature center, Finnish nature center nearby our school, about 30 kilometers away, which kind of like shows the Finnish nature, and there's lots of exhibitions and all kind of things, plus a restaurant and cafeteria, obviously. So we had the bachelor students, and they were also exchange students in there, so it was held in English mostly. And they did the group work, and they had one theme that they were looking into, and the nature center decided the themes, and then the teams kind of like looked what theme is interesting and so forth. And they started to run through these different kind of things throughout the autumn, and visiting the Haltia, and then giving the solution and also pitching about, and then they get the feedback from the company. And it was quite interesting, because you can see that it's a brand new situation, and it's a brand new place at that time. There were lots of nice things, but lots of challenges. So you might see there's a cycling path, or the cycles should be parked down at the end of the steps, so it's kind of like difficult with your bikes. There's some sort of rental services, but there's no information on the walls or anything. There's a private area next to the building. You don't know if it belongs to this place or the other place, so it was private, and all these kind of things, and exhibitions and so forth. And our students were solving different kind of things. And interestingly, one of the interesting thing for me was, for example, I'm a Finn and I know Finnish food, but I didn't recognize the food in the cafeteria, but there were no signs about the food, for example, what it was, and they developed that kind of things. Then we have the master's degree programs, and here's a picture of my colleagues when we were thinking about the curriculum designs and different kind of research projects. We use service design there as well. We have 3 degree programs in English, where the service innovation and design was the first truly kind of like design focused degree program, because the service design, which is currently called service design, previous called customer-centric service development, it was much more focused on the marketing theories, and then on top of that, the design practicalities and practices on that. But that has also changed to service design, so it's much more describing the educational programs and so forth. And then a couple of years ago, we also started more focusing on the digital services. So it's a future innovative digital service development degree program, where we then actually focus on kind of like doing the digital concepts and doing the UI design and these kind of things, which are more practical oriented, and therefore the students have a big portfolio of things when they are actually graduating. They can show that these kind of projects, which are given by the industry or public sector, or other sectors, and they are solving a real life situation on every single course and every single degree program. So they have a way of showing what they have been doing and how they have achieved the situation, and at the same time they also learn to work in a teams and collaborating with other stakeholders, which is very important when you incorporate designerly way of working in other degree programs other than design, I mean. So we have these multidisciplinary degree programs, 3 of them now, and the service innovation and design was the first in the world. So we are very proud of that. And the others are also very, very novel in that sense. So how does our education look like? So we use the templates, we use the Lego serious plays, we use a lot of these kind of post-it stickers. Sometimes we have templates, sometimes we don't have. And this is the time, of course, before the pandemic, so that we met together. Our classrooms are not necessarily like studios, as Hector mentioned, but they are equipped with all kind of different kind of way of working, and this roll of papers and all these kind of gimmicks and gadgets and these kind of things, so that people can and students can work with their ideas and go forward. And well, prototypes can be built from the plastic bags or carton boxes or any kind of thing. So everything is possible when you are motivated and when you are kind of like curious. And the main point is to make something that is non-concrete more concrete and visualist somehow, so that you can talk about the things then. And we have also a few interesting things that you might want to take a look. We have the blog from our CIT students. They write about the experiences, the conferences that they participate. So citlaurea.com. You can go and check out what our master students are thinking about things. We have been creating this kind of idea pakka. It's a set of cards based on one type of service design process, and then every process step is different color, and for each color you have several different kind of tools that you can use. And this is kind of like a quick card set of where you can check out what you should do, and of course you can read them more about in books and articles. And then we have published few publications about the service innovation and design education, because it is the first one in the world, and we have lots of foreign students, especially from Europe. And now I understand why there is so many design students or design degree holders in coming from the Europe and also in Finland, because I think that our design education is not as bad as is USA, as Hector explained, but they are not ready for the industry. And once they go through our master's degree programs, they are ready for the industry for sure. This is just shortly to show how the structure is done. So we have the core competencies. So 30 credits are kind of like a compulsory studies. Then the thesis, so the final work is individual work. So that is also 30 credits. And then you can choose different setups, another 30 credits in your master degree programs. And the competencies are kind of like divided differently, so that there's service logic driven innovation and design competencies. Then we have these business and leadership competencies. Advanced competencies is service innovation and design, and then operational skills for service innovation and design. So you can technically take any kind of combinations of the modules, but you would of course benefit if you take all of those which are in the same settings and so forth. But we teach business competencies, which I called previous like management education. So management competencies, and then along that and intertwine the service design competencies. So service design processes and methods, but we are not aiming at our students to become service designers per se. They may become that, they may not. It depends on what is the background of the students and the prior degrees and work experience and so forth. But we make sure that all of the students understand what can be achieved with this human-centric, iterative, empathic way of working, which is totally, let's say, totally opposite what is being taught on management and business the past 100 years. So how does the future look like? So you might know the design ladder, which is not necessarily the best way of showing how the design has moved, as Hector and Stephen also mentioned, the more larger things, and maybe we should take the steps 5 and 6, in my opinion, too, that to understand that the design or designer way of doing, maybe the word design is not appreciated by all of the different disciplines and theoretical perspectives, but we see that this kind of way of working will bring a lot of there. What we do in the future as well, we are looking into the working life needs. We have just gone through several rounds of interviews with the different sectors and different companies and different professionals to see how they see that the education should go forward. We are renewing our curriculum on a regular basis. Yearly is a kind of like small touch-up, fine-tuning, and then every second or third year we make a little bit bigger changes in there. We have lots of visiting lecturers from the industry and different faculties. So I'm not teaching all of the design stuff because I'm not a teacher. I teach what I can, but then I invite the industry professors and experts to show what they want to see our students to learn, and then we do lots of research on that side. So it's a heavy lifting and a lot to do, but I'm not teaching courses similar way every year. I always change everything on my courses, so I make it very difficult for me. I understand that as a teacher, but somebody asked from the Hector that, you know, how should the teaching be evolving? And I think that the way is to be up to date and make the changes, and by negotiating with the real life dilemma or the problem that you are solving with the students, then you need to also change and focus on what kind of theoretical aspects and what kind of information and new knowledge you are bringing into the classrooms at that sense. So this word palvelumuotoilu is service design in Finnish, and we are sharing different kind of things in our intranet. We have a huge database for different kind of journals and articles and tool sets and these kind of things for our students and our faculty. There's a picture of us with some of my colleagues. We have a team room for everybody who is interested in service design at Laurea. You can join in, you can share things in there. You can share your thoughts and ideas, ask help and so forth. And then we work together, as you can see in the photo there below. And everything has changed, which is not so nice. I prefer face-to-face education, but we used, for example, Miro quite a lot these days, and everything is Zoom. We changed, campuses closed in middle of the March. We have been distance teaching for the past 6 months. We have also changed at the same time the learning environment, totally new learning environment. It's called Canvas, as a first university in Finland. So we have lots of these kind of changes happening at the same time, and learning how to use Miro so that you can work and collaborate with the students and with the teams, and so the practice of the designerly way of working as well. So lots of changes. If I'm happy that this would happen every year, not necessarily, but pandemic has caused some challenges for us as well. Here are some articles that I have been written with my colleagues, and there's also Marco Ferruccia from Mexico City, who has been collaborating with us, and we are currently working a paper about this value proposition for management education that you need to have it as a multidisciplinary approach with Virpi. Hopefully we can finish it soon. And last but not least, this is also an advertisement about Finnish Design Academy, which is a huge endeavor for us. Sorry, I'm probably over time already. So all of the schools who are related to design, it says Finnish University Design Schools, even though that we are not a design school, we are always accepted to these kind of situations, and we have lots of these kind of visiting lectures. Today we had a colleague from Oslo, Norway, to present and so forth, and learning from from each other and creating a vision from the Finnish design education. So also the design education is changing in Finland. We participate other European level initiatives as well. And then we have this working life connections. This is now about academic visitors. So there's Daniela Sangiorgi, who is one of the great names in service design, as well as Katarina Vetter-Edman, who has been written really nice work. And then we use companies like IBM to explain their enterprise design thinking and so forth. And Josina Vink was today designing design principles for service design, service ecosystem design, and so forth. So we have lots of these kind of invitations to participate. And now I will end about picture of me. I'm sitting in a corner of our extra room, and it's not a nice place to work, but pandemic is what it is, and everybody has to work as they can, and that's me. So thank you very much. Now I will stop talking, and you can ask questions and comment my presentation. Thank you.
Dr. Päivi, thanks a lot for sharing your experience in service design. I'm checking the chat, but there are a few questions there. What makes service design different from the traditional design education model?
Yes, there are about 25 to 27 different specialty area in design, in which, for example, industrial design is one of them. But there's lots of others. And therefore, each of those design specialty areas have their own way of teaching design. There are some principles in behind there, like the human approach or empathy or curiosity and these kind of things, iteration and so forth. But they have also this kind of silos in there. And therefore, they are not necessarily kind of like having this overview of this designerly way of doing things, even though that they have the same baseline. So service design is kind of mixture of everything, all of those design stuff, but also other like ethnography and psychology and sociology and so forth. So it's a mixture of all kind of things. It's kind of like an umbrella terminology about what kind of design it is. Somebody said that it's the 28th specialty in design. Yes, you're right. But it's a way of looking things as well. So I think that service design is also really focused on designing services and service business, not necessarily directly only products, but really kind of like different way of looking things.
Thank you. There's a question from Maria Lagunas. Do I need to speak Finnish or Swedish to study in your university? Well,
no. No, everybody in Finland speaks English. There are even some people who speak Spanish better than me. Even my colleagues speak better Spanish than me. So the degree programs which are in English, you can check them out from our web pages or ask your international student coordinator to check them out. There are quite a lot of them. And then everything is in English. So all the instructions are Finnish and English. And you can ask anybody about anything, and everybody can speak English. So no problem.
Luciano, ¿alguna pregunta? Claudio, Patti, los compañeros que nos escuchan, los alumnos.
Bueno, yo tengo por aquí unas preguntas, una por aquí de YouTube y una tuya que no mencionaste, me voy a permitir leerla antes que otras. Dr. Päivi, what are the origins of the service design education? Where was first offered?
Yes, actually the first time that service design were drafted was in I think it was in 1980s, but it was in 1992 or 4, so early 1990s in a university in Germany, where they decide that service design needs to be kind of like coined and talk about more specifically as itself. So there is a huge research and practical center in university in Köln, where it's kind of like originated and spread throughout. However, it met researchers from Scandinavia as well. So it's kind of like hard to say, but the mother of the service design, as we call her, or the grand old lady, Birgit Mager, she said to me when I met her first time, because I asked the same question, she said that, well, we needed to find a work for our design students. So as a design student, you don't get any work. That's also Hector said that it's quite difficult to go to the industry because you need to have other discipline knowledge as well. And they kind of like coined the service design for that purpose. So, but it has been raising all over the world. So they have one of the first PhDs from there, which is public information as well. So the PhD is public, is 2005 and so forth. So it has taken quite some time to raise to the knowledge area as we know it today. But Laurea was the first one to match business education and design education as service innovation and design.
Okay, thanks a lot. Any other question that anybody has?
I have another one from here, from YouTube. They are asking key differences between university and University of Applied Science success.
Yes. Yeah, so I think UAM would be in Europe something called scientific university, so university. And there, when you study, it's more theoretical. So you don't have to have this practical orientation. You might read the articles, you might write your reports and do the exams of the book, but you are not practicing anything in real life situation as we do in University of Applied Sciences. And that is the biggest difference. But when you think about, for example, the final report, the thesis report, in university, it's enough if you do a literature review. Our students do the literature review, and then they have the real life problem, which they will solve by developing it through the service design and this kind of methodologies. So our students do double work compared to the university students.
Okay, and well, what about, or better to say, in an innovation-oriented program, how do you visualize design, and in what stage do you bring it about? As an example, design thinking work ends as an innovation brief, but at the end of the process, a design thinking process, they deliver it to design. So how it functions or how it's operating in your program?
Okay, that's a really nice question. Typically, when we have this kind of like real life problem provided by some organization outside of Laurea, once we negotiated that it's big enough for our students and small enough for our students to complete in given time frame. So the company member, one or two of them, typically come and explain the problem. So give us the design brief to our students, or it's actually a business problem or business challenge that they have to solve. It could be anything that they have decided themselves. And then our students, they typically work in teams because you need to have lots of different expertise and also learn to work together and collaborate. They work throughout the process. It's kind of like moderated and followed by the teacher. Sometimes the industry experts or the people who give the design brief, they can be there to answer your questions, even nowadays it's Zoom, so that the students can ask more and more or visit the company and check out certain things. Now we are working with Volt, with the food delivery company. So they are actually following up the food delivery people, and then they are following up what happens in hotels and so forth. So they are kind of like working together with the different stakeholders, including that company or organization who gave the design challenge. And then towards the end, they don't typically end with only a concept, but they might have something called prototype. And that could be paper version, or it could be done in a more sophisticated way. and they present and pitch that out with the company representatives. So they get the feedback that are they happy, and in cases that the solution that the students are created, they could be posters and these kind of things. The companies are actually taking them in and working them throughout their own company then further and develop and modify their services or create new services. It depends on the challenge.
Okay.
Dr. Päivi, there's another question. This is from Marta Lauria. She's a graduate from our university. She's a graphic designer, but she has been during the last 30 years living in Holland. She now works at the University of Amsterdam for applied sciences. So I think you should should have many things in common. And what she asks is, at this moment, I'm developing a course about speculative design. And I would like to ask if speculative design is a subject at Laurea University.
It depends on what you mean by it, but I think there's an ethical challenge in there. So I think that we need to discuss offline.
Okay.
So it really depends how you see the speculative design, and I'm not sure that we are on the same page of that. So I'm worried about the ethics of it, but maybe you mean something else by it. But
I will send the contact.
Me. Yeah.
Okay. I will send the contact details of both. So especially if the two of you are working in University of Applied Sciences. Yes.
Yes, and the Dutch are really forward also with this service design and service innovation, and they have really, really nice research centers and labs and these kind of things there. So it would be really, really interesting to work together and collaborate. And maybe use the Erasmus exchange programs to visit each other.
Okay, thanks. There was another question from Melina. From Melina, what kind of professional experience is relevant to apply for your program, or is it just a general requirement? I mean, you prefer students with practical experience? Yes.
So it depends on what is your bachelor degree. So if you have worked in that area, what you have a bachelor degree, for example, if you are hospitality management, for example, you work in a hotel or restaurant, that's fine. You can apply with that. Or if you have a master's degree also, that's fine too. So you only have to have worked within the area what you have studied, the two years minimum. You can have. We have also people who have already done master's degree. We have had students who have PhD as well. So we have all kind of people. So we have this multi cohort, so that we have different backgrounds. So it's totally multi-diverse in every different way that you can think of: age, sex, working experience, personal motivation, nationality, language skills, cultures, and these kind of things. So it's really, really multicultural and multidisciplinary education anyway. So as long as you have 2 years of work experience, you're good to go.
Okay.
Claudio, any?
Una más, por aquí tenemos we have a request here. Actually, it's a request more than a question. Could you please give a concrete example of services from an industrial design point of view, bearing in mind its definition, because it seems to be a bit of confusion about with it some teachers in our university, which is deeply true.
That is really, really difficult. But what I understand with the industrial design, it has been focused mostly on product. But of course, also the industrial design have moved to also the services. Whether it's, for example, banking services, you might have their aspect of product, maybe a banking account or a card or mobile phone or whatever, in which you have to use in order to get that service or deliver the service. So it started from the industrial product-driven design, but they have also understood that majority of the things are now their services, and therefore they are kind of like learning the service aspects of it as well. So there's lots of these kind of specialty areas like UI, design, the graphic design lady would probably be better explaining the different kind of like design disciplines that you have to learn. But it's kind of like evolving area as well. And I think that the design education is changing as much as the management education that I'm talking about, more or less. And they are both changing and moving around. A really nice way of saying what's the difference is unfortunately impossible to do in such a short notice and in a short way. But I think that if you think any ways that, you know, it's a service that you are creating, and value is the most important thing, not value for the company, but value for the consumers and the users, then you are good to go.
Very well. Well, maybe this question could be more enlightenment for the same answer that is expected. And well, from the point of view, this is me, not the question. I mean, just trying to make a contest. From the point of view of marketing, from management, they have this very clear production definition. They say a product is an idea, a good, or a service that adds value for an exchange program or exchange action, okay? So from that point of view, what about the service experience design? What are the design challenges and the business challenges to be faced in the future of course, thinking about or talking about the service design?
Yeah, so first of all, it's the traditional way of thinking about business, to think about that a product is exchanged and money is exchanged, and that brings some sort of a use for the user. The service logic explains it's more that any product or any service is valuable for its user only when it's used. So it's not exchange-based, but use-based. And to understand then that there are so many different people, and we have different needs and different way of using all kind of services. Service design will bring different kind of way of understanding the user's perspective on this table. In previous time, like 1990s, there's a lot of discussion about customization of the products based on the certain customer segments, for example. Very old-fashioned way, very kind of like traditional way of understanding customers. I always say that, you know, I have colleagues who are the same age and same background as I am, and we are not alike at all. Our needs are totally different for different services. So value in use is the only thing that is important to be able to create, and that creates money for the people or the providers of that service, whether it's a one company or network of company. And that has to be designed totally differently than it has been designed before. And there the service design comes into the picture.
Well, that's very interesting, especially after hearing Professor Melamed, when he just taught us that we have to see value not in terms of extracting value out of a production, but in the way of sharing it with others. I mean, that may be the same symphony, or
I find him speaking about quite a lot of things that what is kind of like everyday discussion in our university as well. I think that what he said, that the designers are working with the imagined future. So they imagine a vision, the future, how it could be, and then try to achieve that as well. But they are always listening to the people who will be around that service but not asking that, you know, can you create me a faster car? But, you know, why do you need a faster car? So trying to find out the reasoning behind and being creative in that sense and using that kind of knowledge in there. And I think that he himself, especially having been an industrial designer and creating lots of products, he probably is kind of like realizing now that maybe not all of those products were actually needed, but they were created on the sake of the businesses. And when we think about America or USA in general terms, the whole ecosystem is built on consumption of products. So new products And that is not the way how we in Europe see things anyway. We are much more sustainable from the beginning with. And therefore, many of those old management or design kind of way of thinking is not so suitable for European people because we think differently. But it's really kind of like American way of thinking that let's create more products and more versions of them and make them nicer and prettier and so forth, so that people would consume and use money. And I think that that's why we have lots of landfills full of old products, and we need to make a change. And make a difference.
Claudio, there's one more question, and I'm going to read it. And before I forget, Dr. Paivi and Maestra Marta Lauria, I just sent you an email with your contact details, so you will continue exchanging ideas. This is from Julio Muñoz. He's an academic at UAM University. And he asked, could you please give a concrete example of services from an industrial design point of view, bearing in mind its definition? Because it seems to be a bit of confusion about it with some teachers in our university. It's like these different perspectives. So what's your answer about this?
Yeah, I tried to answer that, but not knowing what is educated in industrial design faculty at your university, it's quite difficult to say. But let's take the heart rate monitor that many of you has on your hand, like a wristwatch. It can be in different companies. So you are monitoring your steps and your calories and your sleep and these kind of things. So the watch itself is probably designed by the industrial designer so that it fits to your wrist and it's nice to carry and it's good size and all this kind of thing. But everything else is probably designed by somebody called service designer team, which is that they are looking at how it looks like and what kind of information, how the data is presented there, and then how that data is sent to your personal web pages or to your doctor or your physical therapist or whatever where you need it, and so forth. So even that the industrial designer is involved to actually developing the actual product, the services around it that can be used and done, that is probably designed by the team, where they could be industrial designers as well and other people with other professions. Maybe
so industrial design and service design are not separate, but they work together. Well, that's what I...
Yes, everybody works together. We are not separating anybody. We welcome everybody on board. So even nurses in hospitals are service designers when they are participating in the service design project, when we are looking into their work and how they do things. So they also be part of that team and they are as respected. And we are trying to make their life easier to explaining what we are doing, why we are doing it. And then they can kind of like experience it themselves. And some of them are more interested about it. And some are more moving back to the nurturing and taking care of the patients. So,
okay. So thanks a lot. Claudio, Patty, I think we're over time. So I don't know if you want to have a closing remark, any commentary, Patty, Claudio?
No,
thank you very much. Thank you very much to be here in Mexico in our Congress. Welcome.
Actually, Paivi, she's been at UAM about 3 or 4 years ago, and she also has been to UPAEP at the University at Puebla, and she's been to Tecnológico de Monterrey. When she worked for Nokia, she used to work to these, how do they say, ensambladoras along the Mexico and US border. So she's been several times. And as a matter of fact, 2 of her colleagues, I cannot remember her names, but they've been to UAM as well, that they deliver seminars. And Marco Ferrusca, our director, he spent one sabbatical period at Laurea. Yes. So there's a long tradition between Laurea and UAM. But thanks a lot for
it has been a pleasure for me. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your nice comments and lots of questions. I appreciate this.
Okay. Thank you. I have a class. I have to run now. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Buenas noches.
Thank you a lot. And maybe, have we finished?
Invitarlos a nuestro panel de egresados a las 5 de la tarde, los esperamos. El panel está muy interesante, va a tratar de toda la experiencia que han tenido nuestros egresados a través del mundo. Está egresada de Australia, egresado de Diseño Industrial, que está en Canadá, y tenemos también a Julio Alba, que es uno de nuestros expositores, que ha tenido un muy buen posicionamiento a nivel internacional. Los esperamos.